Welcome back to First Edition. This morning the government will be having a briefing for backbenchers on the National Energy Guarantee, the government's signature energy policy. With me is the Minister, Josh Frydenberg. What do you want to achieve out of this briefing today? I know you've got a number of business representatives with you and meeting the backbench. What is your aim out of these meetings?
Well, Kieran, there are the leading representatives out of the farming, the mining, the manufacturing, business and industry sectors. They represent more than 5 million workers between them, more than 150,000 businesses. They're some of Australia's largest employers, and they have big energy bills. So it's important for them to be able to convey to my colleagues how important getting energy policy right is in this country, and a key part of that is the National Energy Guarantee.
Are you looking at an add-on of baseload power through either coal or gas? Simon Benson and Joe Kelly report that you're looking at a special add-on to the National Energy Guarantee, one to lock in supply, but also to head off a potential rebellion within the party room. Is that right?
Well, the party room does strongly support the National Energy Guarantee, that this issue's already been through it. You've heard a number of my colleagues come out in recent days in support. And of course, what I'm trying to prosecute through both the meeting of the COAG Energy Council with the states and with my colleagues is the National Energy Guarantee as designed by the Energy Security Board with its two new obligations on the region.
And would you have that add-on? Is that something you're looking at in terms of baseload?
I'm focused principally on the Energy Security Board's recommendation and blueprint for the National Energy Guarantee.
That's what you're focusing on today, but do you reject this report that you're looking at an add-on component as well?
Well, my colleagues are absolutely focused on lower power prices, and we will, as a government, take any action possible to deliver those lower power prices. The beauty of the National Energy Guarantee, Kieran, is that it has an all-of-the-above approach. It sees a role for coal, sees a role for gas, an increasing role for renewables, and just yesterday we saw an emergency
for small businesses in Queensland by over 14% and households by over 8%. That comes on the back of what the three large retailers had recently announced. So we are seeing positive messages come through on price, and ultimately that's the fundamental concern of my colleagues.
The Nationals are going to lobby Malcolm Turnbull for additional incentive for greater investment in coal-fired power. This is on the authority of the Nationals party room, Michael McCormack, to lobby the PM. What's your reaction to that? What do you say to the Nationals this morning?
I've spoken to Michael McCormack, and he told me that there is strong support in his party room for the National Energy Guarantee. I've spoken to a lot of Nationals about the National Energy Guarantee and how important it is for our country. This is our first and best chance, and maybe our last chance.
Not our first.
Our first real chance, our best chance, and certainly maybe our last chance.
It's not the first chance. There's been several over many, many years, and they've all been botched. That's the reality, isn't it?
No, well, Kieran, to be fair, you wouldn't be sitting here with. You wouldn't be sitting here having this discussion if we ended up with a carbon tax that would have increased people's power bills, because we actually needed to abolish that. And just like the ETS was not the way to go, what we've landed is, I think, a really appropriate, workable solution recommended by the experts and backed by business.
Well, you hope so, but this is a tricky, as you know better than anyone. If you move to placate the Nationals and members of your own party, then you risk alienating the state premiers and Labor, who you also need to get on board to provide this certainty.
Well, having spoken to the states, they recognise how important it is to keep coal in the system, and how
second type as well and the mistruths that has dominated this debate. They want a way forward. But can you bring specifically Daniel Andrews? He's got an election coming up. Yeah. The Victorian renewable energy target is a big promise of his. He wants to maintain that. And can he do both?
With the renewable energy target sits, from a state perspective, sits side by side with the federal target, and that is absolutely part of the federal government's overall target. But what's important about Victoria is that they recently announced that they were extending the coal licences in the Latrobe Valley, and that coal-fired generators would have to give a minimum 5 years' notice before they could close.
Okay.
Now, in Queensland, they have a 50% renewable energy target, but they also say very clearly that they don't think coal-fired power stations will close. What you're seeing from the Labor states is their emphasis on coal, just as you've seen in the NEG, the ability to put a premium on reliability, of which coal is one source.
In terms of compromise, are you willing to change the lock-in period for the targets? That seems to be something that Labor might be much more open to.
Well, we're not
if you say to reduce it to 5 years, the period where the targets would be locked in for.
Well, Labor has known the ESB's position since the early papers went out at the start of this year. So it's been very consistent that this would be locked down in legislation for a 10-year period. Now, if the Labor Party want to go to the next election advocating for higher targets, let them make the case. We'll obviously say we've got the targets right, and that's the most cost-effective way for consumers.
On to the issue around company tax. We've seen the Labor Party target the Prime Minister specifically and personally, and the Daily Telegraph reports today some detail as to just the philanthropy of the Turnbull family. What do you say in relation to that story? Is that, he's been very private about what he's paid in terms of charity, but that's been released today as a rebuttal, I guess, to the Labor attack.
Well, obviously, everyone would welcome the Prime Minister donating such a significant amount of money to charity. His personal story is one of tragedy to triumph, and certainly I would always want a successful self-made entrepreneur running our country than a glorified union official. But there's something a little bit more sinister about the Labor Party's attacks here, the politics of envy, the class warfare. I mean, Sir Robert Menzies said that this was the greatest political disease in Australia, this distinction between the so-called rich and the relatively idle, and saying that every political question in Australia could be answered by saying, which side are you on? That, he said, was incredibly dangerous. And the Labor Party, Kieran, would be best advised to look at their own history. Remember Jack Lang? Jack Lang and his dismissal, the Labor Party split of the early 1950s. It consumes the party by battling along these class warfare lines. It's very, very destructive for the country, and indeed it will be for the Labor Party.
Minister, thanks very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
Let's have a quick update of the weather for you this Tuesday. We've got a frosty morning, should be a dry day over the south though. A few showers for the east coast and developing over the southwest. Here on First Edition, do stick with us. We've got some of our top stories just ahead for you. Plus, police are finding the cause of a blaze that destroyed a Western Sydney school.
The Kia 7-day sale has been extended. On top of great drive away.
To look